Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
How would you like to become unstoppable, irresistible, and unafraid in every area of your life? Get free instant access to my Double Your Confidence program. Get free instant access to my Double Your Confidence program to become a person of action, overcome any obstacle, and scale any height. Go to kfmconfidence.com to get instant access to my program. Again, that's kfmconfidence.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Ryan Michler, husband, father, Iraqi combat veteran, and founder of Order of Man. All right, Ryan, happy to have you here.
Andrew, thanks for having me, man. I'm stoked to be on the show.
All right, always a pleasure. And Ryan, we're going to start off the show with a favorite success quote or a saying that you've lived by and how that's helped you on your journey. So share with us what you got.
Yeah, so I was actually just looking at a quote this morning that I came across, and it was pretty enlightening if you delve into it. And it is, "I am an old man and have known a great many troubles, but most of them have never happened." And that's by Mark Twain. And as I was going through that this morning, I was thinking about it. I think the fear that we have in life sometimes paralyzes us and is more so than the fear or the hardship of actually going through the process. So my success quote, I guess, or idea that comes from that is sometimes you just got to get started. You got to overcome the fear of the unknown and just get started and get going.
Yeah. It's kind of like the more you self-talk to yourself, it like grows.
You freak yourself out.
It's the one you feed. It's if you keep feeding it, it just grows and grows and grows, and it becomes this monster that you can't overcome. And it could have just been something simple that you were trying to do, and you're like, oh no, I can't do it.
Yeah, simple or just non-existent. Like the issue wasn't really there, but because you made it a big deal, now all of a sudden it's there, and you've got to face it. When in all reality, if you would have just left it alone or just went forward, you wouldn't have had to deal with it in the first place.
So when's the time that you've experienced something like this? Even recently? Yeah,
I mean, even as I started Order of Man, I mean, there was a lot of self-talk and a lot of doubt. Hey, there's all the other guys doing it. Andrew's out here doing it, and Art of Charm, and Art of Manliness, and what about me? Like, what am I going to bring to the table that these guys can't do on their own? And so it almost paralyzed me to the point of not doing it. But what I realized was that I say a lot of the same things that you say and a lot of the same things a lot of guys say, but my experience is what makes me unique. And there's guys that are going to resonate with the way that I say it and deliver it. And there's going to be guys that resonate with the way that you deliver it. So it's just as valuable. So I almost talked myself out of not starting Order of Man.
Yeah, that's a common, I help guys launch their businesses and their blogs, their podcasts, different programs. And that's probably one of the first barriers that people they'll raise and be like, hey, well, like at first they're excited and then like, who am I to really start this thing? And I'm like, no, like, look, your story, your challenges, everything that you've gone through is unique to you. Like I haven't gone through what you've gone through. And I don't have kids, like, so that's a massive thing that other guys who do have kids they want to connect with someone who may already have that, or who has a house, who has a mortgage, who works a corporate 9-to-5. So everybody
and my philosophy too is it's almost like, who are you not to start it? I mean, you've overcome trials and adversities and hardship, and you have all of these experiences. And quite honestly, if you're not willing to share those experiences and help other people, really at the end of the day, it might just be a selfish thing that you're not starting it, rather than selfish that you are considering starting a business.
Yeah. I'm thinking that right now I'm working on a book about porn, and it's like sometimes I'm procrastinating. I'm letting that thing feed, and it's preventing me from just sitting down and writing it out. But it's like, who am I to not put this out? Because I've got something, like I've got this really cool way of helping guys overcome that challenge, and I need to get it out. Like that's what I keep thinking. Like there are guys who need this. I need to get it in front of their faces.
Yeah, I mean, how many thousands or millions of guys are you going to help if you do it, and not help if you don't?
Exactly. Bottom line. All right, the great quote there, and just simple, the one you feed grows.
That's right.
Now, Ryan, Michler, how'd you get started with all this Order of Man? And share with us a little bit about Iraq.
Okay, yeah. I'll spare you some of the details. I really grew up without a permanent father figure, and I never really had this masculine male role model in my life. And a lot of what I gained about manliness and how to interact with other men and what it actually means to be a man, I gained from sports that I was involved in. I played 3 different sports in high school, and I got a lot of it, through the military as well. Obviously, that's a very masculine environment. There's a lot of discipline and structure that goes along with that as well. So I really set out on this journey of what does it mean to be a man? How can I be a better man? And really the point in my life that this actually really started to become important for me is as I started to have children. And I looked at my first son, and I didn't know what to do. I had no idea. I never had this male role model. I never knew what it was like to be a good dad, what it was like to be a good husband, what it was like to be a business owner. And so I just had to find a way to do this. And so I started to consume a lot of information, podcasts, blogs, all of that information out there. And like I said, I feel like I've got a unique set of circumstances growing up without a permanent father figure and having a military background. And I can share this with guys. And that's why I started Order of Man. It's been a really exciting journey over the past year is how long I've been doing it now. Yeah.
You brought up a common, I just finished up a program helping guys become stronger men. And one of the things I say is like, hey, it's not your fault entirely if you're feeling this way. A lot of men do grow up without having a strong, either the father's not there, like completely just not there, or he could still be there, but he's not present.
Well, let me say this too. I'm going to back up for a second because yes, it's not your fault in 99.9% of the circumstances. It wasn't my fault that I grew up without a permanent father figure, but now that I'm 35 years old, it is my fault if I use that as a crutch not to do what I should be doing in life. If I use that as an excuse not to be all that I can be. And so I think we're very quick to pass the blame or make an excuse as to why we're not successful in any area of life, when in all reality, if we begin to assume the responsibility and the accountability for every decision and every experience we have in life, we're so much more powerful when we do that.
So when was the tipping point for you when you took that responsibility? Because that to me is a core pillar of a man, is responsibility, is when he finally grabs the pen and starts writing his own story.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And to be fair to my mother, a lot of it came from her. She raised my sister and I pretty much on her own. I remember there was times in our lives while we were in middle school and high school where she was working 3 jobs to put food on the table. And it would have been very easy for her to do a lot of different things to handle that situation so much differently because of these factors that she felt like she had no control over. But she owned it. She took responsibility of it. I never heard her complain about it. There was always a roof over her head, always food on the table. We were always able to participate in sports because of the efforts and the accountability and responsibility she had not only to herself, but to her children. So she instilled a lot of that in me, but it even became more prevalent for me again as I started to have kids and I started to look at getting into businesses, and I surrounded myself with other people who were successful. I'm a financial advisor by trade, and I looked at these guys who were having success as I was getting in the business, and all of them were saying the same thing over and over. Hey, I can control my business. I control my destiny. And that's a lot of where I learned this when it comes to business.
Yeah. And so what branch in the military?
I was in the National Guard. So I actually joined when I was 17 years old. And if you're familiar with National Guard or even Army Reserve, you go 1 weekend a month and then you go 2 or 3 weeks during the year in the summer and you do some training. So that's what I thought I was getting into. And it was a way for me to pay for college. And I was always someone who was patriotic. And I believe that men are men of action. And so that's part of the reason I got involved. And then I found myself in 2005 in the back of a helicopter flying up the Euphrates River as we were about to spend some time in Iraq for the next year, which was a pretty crazy event.
So I'm the National Guard, I always just assumed that they protected the country. Like they were the police, kind of the federal police of the country in a way. What's National Guard doing overseas?
Yeah, good question. So National Guard is actually state funded. So it's almost like a state military, if you will, because it is state funded versus the Army, which is federally funded. So traditionally, a lot of National Guard guys will do local things. I remember in 2002, I think it was, the Salt Lake Olympics. I actually spent 45 days up there patrolling the Olympics. But if there's natural disasters, emergencies, things like that, that's where the National Guard will come in. But during in 2001, so after September 11th, 2001, we needed a lot of troops to go over to the Middle East. And so they actually started deploying National Guard units to go over and do that. And so that's what we did. We were going to go in 2003, and a week before we were supposed to leave, they said, no, never mind. You're not going to do that. You're going to go train ROTC cadets in Fort Lewis, which is in Washington. And then they got us 2 years later to go back out there.
Wow. And did you see combat in Iraq?
Yeah. I mean, every day we got hit with a mortar or a rocket. It was pretty crazy. I will say I never had to fire my weapon, believe it or not, which was kind of an interesting thing. But like I said, we got hit with mortars and rockets every single day. And so it was exciting to say the least. And I learned a lot. And it was overall, it was a good developmental experience in my life.
Yeah. You said you learned a lot. Like, what were some of those big lessons you learned fighting in Iraq?
You know, what's interesting is if we make, let's say this, if we don't make a decision in life, or we make the wrong decision, we might be out a little money. The odds or what we're playing for is not really that significant necessarily. But if you don't make a right decision or don't make a decision at all in a combat situation, you're literally talking about life or death. So we had to analyze information very quickly. We had to decipher what that actually meant. We had to come up with a course of action. And so to learn how to be decisive, to learn how to stick by your decision, to learn how to execute a decision, to learn how to work with thousands of other men to accomplish a task, the discipline that comes along with it. There's so many valuable lessons that I was able to extract from that experience.
Yeah. Is this something that you think men are lacking just in the general population, decisiveness?
Oh, yeah. I think we just go where the wind takes us for the most part. We wake up and our alarms go off because somebody told us we had to be up at a certain time, and then we drive to work the way that we've always drove to work, and then we go do the things at work that our bosses always told us to do, and then we're able to get our break at the same exact time. And then maybe our buddies or our colleagues are doing something, so we go do something with them, and then we wake up and we start this whole thing over again without putting any intentionality and thought into what it is that we want to accomplish on a daily basis or in our lives.
Yeah. And is this a story that you played for yourself for a while after Iraq?
When you say that, are you saying that maybe I didn't have direction when I got back? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Maybe you came back and you're still following the narrative.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never been asked that question. When I was overseas, I was married. So my wife and I were married for 6 months before I left, and I was managing retail stores in the Southwest. And we knew I didn't want to get back to that. So I actually took all of my financial and my insurance and investment material information back to Iraq with me from a leave and studied while I was overseas, and came back and started the financial planning process because I had no idea what to do, and it sounded good. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So to answer your question, yes, I followed that path. Fortunately, it worked out really well for me over the past 9 years, as is how long I've been a financial advisor. But it could have very easily gone the other way, and I could have found myself miserable and in a position that I just didn't want to be in. And so part of the intentionality and deliberateness about my life now has actually led me to start Order of Man, which, like I said, has been about a year.
Yeah. I'm looking at it here, and one of the first things I see on the site is live with purpose.
Yeah.
This is a core foundation of the philosophy at Order of Man?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, we're just wandering wherever we can. And it's really frustrating when you're living a life that you don't have purpose, and you don't have excitement, and you don't have adventure, and you don't have all of these things that I think men really need in their lives. We die a little bit. I think our soul maybe dies a little bit when I don't want to say do things that other people tell us to do, but do things that aren't in line with who we genuinely are. And that's what's happening to us as men. We're in this situation where we're not adventurous. We're not engaging in activities. We're not following passions. We're not pursuing those things. And it's not a good thing. I don't know how else to describe it other than if you followed your passion, and if you took an adventure, and if you did some exciting things in life, you would begin to feel alive different than you've ever felt before.
Yeah. And what I'm noticing too about you is you've had this career in financial advising by trade. And I think for many, guys, when we have this type of conversation, especially on this show, I think they're assuming that what I'm saying is to quit your job and just go all in on something. But like you've built, obviously, your website's nice. You got your own show. You're making an impact. You're doing something that you really enjoy at the same time. And do you have plans to eventually leave that, or do you really like this balance of both?
No, I'm actually in the process of converting over to Order Man full-time as we speak. So just what you said, I didn't just one day wake up and decide that I'm not going to be a financial advisor anymore. This has been a year-long. It's actually been longer than a year, but consciously actually putting forth the effort has been a year-long process. And so that'll actually happen within the next couple of months. So for those guys who maybe aren't happy with where they are in life right now and aren't satisfied and they feel dead a little bit inside, you don't have to do it all at once. In fact, that probably wouldn't be a prudent decision, especially if you have a family. But you need to be working towards something else, something better, a better life for yourself.
So yeah, this is I got a couple questions here. This is good. Because even for myself, like I did just quit. Like I was like, and I quit.
Oh, you did?
However, there was a period, I knew I was going to quit. It just took me 6 months to quit.
Right.
But when I did quit, like I hadn't really no battle plan, but I knew I was going to quit, and it just took me 6 months to really gather the courage and kind of make some plans before that happened. But in your case here, how do you do it? So how many hours a week are you working at your job?
Yeah, so I'm in a position, fortunately, where I own my financial planning practice. So about almost 3 years ago now, I branched out from a major financial firm that I was working with, a nationwide financial firm, and started my own thing. So that was actually the very first step in this process, is that I had to be out on my own. So I had flexibility and control of the way I managed my day and the way I managed my schedule. So that happened 3 years ago because I felt trapped where I was. I felt like I had to do it that corporate way. And I felt like if I didn't do it that way, then I wasn't part of the team, and there was all this just kind of weird anxiety that I had going on. And I said, I just need some freedom. I need some flexibility. I need to do it my way, even if my way means that I have to reinvent the wheel. So I started my own financial firm, which allowed me a lot of time flexibility, and it also allowed me a lot of monetary flexibility because my income actually increased when I went out and started my own practice because I was keeping 100% of what I was making as opposed to splitting it with the national firm I was working with.
Yeah.
So that was the first step. So to answer your question about hours and how much time I put in the day, I'm usually about 20 to 30% order of man, and the 70% to 80% is dedicated to my financial planning practice. But within the next 60 days, I see that completely flip-flopping.
That's great. Yeah, one of the challenges, and just to even throw in there, like you're married and you have kids, and so that just added more responsibility to your plate. And so it's like, you have a job, you have to provide, you have your own place. It's like there's all these responsibilities you have, and these are common barriers or objections that I'll get from guys. It's like, oh, Andrew, like you're single basically, you're not married, you don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage, and that's absolutely true. I don't have those things, and so I do have more flexibility, but I don't think it's just impossible. Like, oh, you've made those decisions in your past, therefore you have to stick to that narrative for the rest of your life. There's always, you're a living example here. There's always something that you can do, and it's going to take longer. Like you said, 3 years ago, you made that decision. But the thing is you started, and now look at this, like 60 days later or even less, you'll be fully into this thing that you've built.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's easy to look at other guys and say, well, this guy has it easy because of this, and that guy could do it because of this. And at the end of the day, all you're doing is rationalizing your inability to do what it is needs to be done. So I would really, if I'm in that situation and I catch myself saying things like that, at the end of the day, you've got to understand that's an excuse and start looking at all the guys who have had success that are in the exact same situation than you, or even they're in a worse position than you, and they were able to overcome those odds. If that guy can do it, you can do it. But again, it's going to take some deliberateness, take some intentionality. I talked about 3 years ago starting the firm. But the other side that's really cool about this is that if you're on an adventure, if you're on the path, you can stomach it better. You can live with having to go into the office from 9 to 5 because from 5 to 9, you get to chase your passion. So even if you're taking small steps, you're able to make it through the rest of the stuff that you don't want to be involved with right now because there's hope that you're getting out of that situation.
Yeah. And what's it like for you when you're doing the financial advising thing, and then when you switch over and you're working on Order of Man? Like, what's that like just in your body, like your energy, your state of mind?
You know, the interesting thing about this is I actually like my financial planning business. So
I do get that from you. I get that you actually, it's not like this horrible place.
Exactly.
Like, so I get that it's like, it's pretty, you built it. I get that.
Well, and part of this though goes back to when I was working with that national firm. I didn't feel it. I felt like I had to wear a suit and I had to be this persona that they wanted me to be. And I dreaded getting up and I dreaded going to work. And I thought there's got to be a better way to do this. And that was the start of me taking control of it. And so I still was a financial advisor, but I did it in my own way. I mean, if you look at what I look like on a daily basis, I'm wearing jeans and a button-up shirt, and I've got this beard that's probably now 5-6 inches long. I'm a financial advisor. I mean, you could probably find a financial advisor. You could count on one hand the amount of financial advisors that have a beard of any length. But what's interesting is when you do it your way, people resonate with you.
Yeah.
Like, they're not turned off by my beard or my appearance. They're actually turned on, not a creepy way, but turned on because they like that I'm authentic. They like that they can relate to me. They can see that I'm confident with who I am.
Yeah. I was going to say that you just, when you're authentic, I want to work with someone who's authentic, who's really them, and they're not like, it adds a level of trust. And
right.
Whenever you're doing business, obviously, especially with financial advising, you want trust. And so,
if you wanted a robot, I mean, you could do that stuff online, but the more technology advances, the more that people crave a human experience. And that's what I would suggest that anybody tries to do is infuse some of that authenticity and genuineness in who you really are so people can have the experience of you.
Yeah, I like this. And when you're making this transition, what is this like for your family? Like, how is your wife? Does that conversation go with your wife? It's like, hey, I'm going to go from 70% with financial advising, and I'm going to flip that and then focus more on Order of Man.
So I think anytime you're talking about communication, especially when you're involving a spouse, it's all about expectations and continual communication. So if one day I just went to her and I said, hey, hon, next month I'm going to be quitting and I'm going to be doing this full time, that would be a scary conversation, one that I probably wouldn't make it out of alive.
Right.
But there is a lot of expectations, a lot of groundwork up front about here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. I had this great idea a week ago and I shared that idea with her and she said, that is a great idea, but it's not a great idea right now. And it's just like you're an entrepreneur. You always have ideas and things going through your head. But because we're continually conversing and having conversation about this, we're on the same page. And if I need a little course correction, she can do that. If I need to push a little harder on this one instance, I can do that because we're a team. We're working together. I think the hardest part of our transition, though, is me not having an office outside of the house and only being in the house. That's probably going to be the hardest transition for me.
Yeah. Are you guys both in the house?
Yeah, we are. She stays home. We've got 3 kids. We've got another one on the way. And so she's a full-time homemaker.
Yeah.
And it's tough for those guys that are listening that experience this. And you'll have some of this as well if and when you decide to have kids, is that I feel guilty when I'm at home and I'm in my office working because I want to be playing with my kids.
Yeah.
But then the other side of it is if I'm out there wrestling with them and playing with them and doing stuff with them, I feel guilty because I need to be in the office providing and doing the things that part of what the other component of what being a man is, and that is to provide, right?
Right. Yeah. You might have to get a place or a small office at some point.
I may have to. Yep.
Just to stay productive.
We'll see.
Yeah. Another key point you have on Order of Man is achieve self-mastery. What does this mean to you, and how can men attain that?
You know, I actually put it in there, if I'm being truthful. It was this little buzzword that I thought sounded good when I initially did it. And somebody called me out on it. They're like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't know what that means. And I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Self-mastery is figuring out where your weakness is and developing and enhancing and building upon that weakness. And what I'm talking about is virtues that you probably should be adhering to. So honor, integrity, discipline, courage, commitment, all of those virtues that we generally know we should be adhering to, but for whatever reason, maybe we can't. So I'll give you a prime example. Pornography. You're talking about putting together a new book. That's a self-mastery issue, right? If you can't overcome that addiction, that's going to limit your ability to become the full version of yourself. So you've got to find a way to master that addiction so that you can reach your full potential. And that's exactly what I'm talking about when we talk about self-mastery.
Yeah. The word that comes to me, like the first word that comes to me when I see this is discipline. It's we don't like, it's like that word no one really likes. It's like discipline.
Yeah.
But if you can't stop, the example of porn, if you can't stop yourself from doing that, or any other type of addiction, drinking, drugs, cigarettes, then that thing owns you, because it owns your time. It can command money from you, and it's owning your soul. And to have self-mastery, I believe you need to have that discipline to be able to say no. And a part of that is taking responsibility of your life and saying that I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go in this other direction. You may not be able to quit cold turkey with anything, because any addiction is hard, but you can slowly get off for sure.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, discipline and consistent discipline, right? Anybody can be disciplined for a day or a week, maybe even, but can you do it for a month, or can you do it for a year? You know, we're fairly new into the year, and I bet most people have already given up on their New Year's resolutions at this point.
Yeah, it's a good topic. What do you think is something guys can do to get back on their New Year's resolutions, or why have they given up on their New Year's resolutions?
The reason most people give up on their New Year's resolutions is because of the term itself, and it's a lot about goal setting, and goal means end result, right? Like, I want to have 6-pack abs, or I want to be in better shape, or I want to make $200,000 this year, or whatever, right? So they come up with this end result, and then they don't see the progress along the way. So they get very frustrated very quickly, and they give up on it because they think it's unattainable. So 3 years ago, I weighed 50 pounds more than what I actually weigh today. And I always had this goal of losing weight, getting in better shape, doing races, and playing with my kids, and all the things that I wanted to do. And I got very frustrated because I just couldn't seem to lose the weight, no matter how hard I thought about this goal of being in good shape. And so what I did is I said, you know what? Let me not focus on being in better shape. Let me just focus on a few key actions that I can measure my success by. So I'm not going to measure my success by what that little number on the scale says. I'm going to measure my success by the fact of, did I go into the gym for an hour today? Did I not eat after 7 o'clock? Did I cut out the sugars today? And when I started measuring the actionable steps that I had control over, by default, the weight seemed to disappear. So, moral of the story, focus less on goals and start committing yourself to a daily actionable step that you can take today and tomorrow and every single day for the next 365 days. I promise your life won't even look the same when you start doing those things.
Yeah. And when you do something like that, you can use time to your advantage, such as all I have to do is just keep doing this. And if I keep doing this, it's just a matter of time before I start seeing those results.
Right.
And you can just trust in the process. Like, you don't have to kill yourself. Some people, what was it? The insanity workout. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Well, the name is Insanity. So it's crazy.
Right.
I remember I did it, and it's an 8-week program, and it's just, it's ridiculous. It's crazy. Like, it's unsustainable. There's no way that someone could continue just doing this for like after the 8 weeks. Like after like week 3, you just can't wait for it to be over. And it's like, if you have small, consistent actions that you're doing, whether that be your health or even in business, like I always have done 2 episodes a week. And now I think this would be like episode 200 and I don't know, like 55 or 60 now.
Right.
And, I just keep doing it. And these daily actions, over time, 2.5 years later, you got all these episodes, millions of downloads. It's just little actions.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
It's crazy what you can do when you just do the little actions over time. And I think so many of us, and this goes along with self-mastery, is we want things now. We want instant gratification now. We live in this type of society. And I was watching this like independent movie. I don't think anyone's heard of it. It's this French movie. I was just on Netflix late at night watching it. But this counselor said this thing to this girl who was like having drug problems. She was like, easy money is a downward spiral. And I wrote that down. I was like, that's good, because you could just replace easy money with anything that's easy. Anything that's easy is a downward spiral in life where it's unsustainable. So she was selling herself. She was like a teenage prostitute, and easy money is a downward spiral. Like, it's exciting and it's you get it and it's really thrilling, and then it just what do you have to do to get that? And so the reason why I was watching that is because I'm doing this porn book. So I watched another documentary about young porn stars in the industry and how they get started, and they all just want, like, at the core of why a porn star gets started in the industry, she may like sex. That's probably a part of it. But the main reason that these girls get involved in it is because they're coming from a broken home from the middle of nowhere, and they get a little taste of freedom. They're making big chunks of money that they've never made before, like, $1,000 here, $2,000 here, and they're doing it in Los Angeles or Miami. So they have these, like, whoa, they're coming from a small town. They're going out to these clubs, and it just blows them away. But they just want that freedom, but they don't actually like what they have to do to achieve that freedom.
Yeah. I think the other trap, and I haven't researched this at all, so this may be off, but one thing that I see a lot of people fall into is the trap of validation. So they're out looking for groups and organizations and things that they can belong to for validation because they never received that in their younger years or whatever. And so we make decisions not based on what we want, but based on what I think, well, what should I talk about today? What would Andrew really like? You know what I mean? And so we have conversations and we do things throughout a daily basis that are pleasing to other people, even though they may not be true and authentic to ourselves. And then we get in this trap. And that's, again, why our soul dies, because we're chasing somebody else's dreams, not our own.
So this leads me to want to go into legacy. Like, when we talk about creating your legacy, what does that mean to you? And why do this?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the times when people think of legacy, we think of our monetary legacy. How much money am I going to leave behind?
Right.
And that's great, but money's only a tool, right? And it's a tool to allow you to accomplish great things in life or horrible things, frankly, as well. So it's just a tool depending on how it's wielded. But for me, my legacy is about impacting other men. So obviously I've got my family legacy of creating self-sufficient, contributing members of the United States of America. That is my goal with my children, right? And that's the legacy that I hope to leave. And they can do the same thing. But my job as a father is to fully equip my children so that they can do that. They can be self-sustaining. They can be out on their own. They can make their own decisions and live their own lives. My goal is not to necessarily be their friend, although that's a great byproduct. It's to help them be completely self-reliant. But from a mission with Order of Man, it's literally to impact millions of men across the planet so that they can do the same thing in their own lives, in their families' eyes, in their children, in their communities, in their businesses, wherever it is they're living their lives. I want them to have a greater impact on people around them.
And what is having this, just understanding, like, this is what I want to do, like, as the legacy I want to leave, like, how does this guide you? How does this as you're moving through life, like, I'm wondering, how does this affect you? How does this make an impact on your daily decisions?
Yeah. So that question of what's going to leave the biggest legacy at this point is not even a question I really contemplate all that much, although it used to be. But I know, again, going back to the end result versus the actions, I know that I'm going to leave an amazing legacy for my kids and my neighborhood and my community and my family if I'm living true to myself. And living true to myself means following this path of Order of Man, means impacting other guys' lives because it's important to me. And it may not be important to you as you're listening to this, and it doesn't matter what it is. Whatever it is that's important to you, you need to follow that, because when you live life the way that you were designed and born and created to live, the legacy, the amazing, incredible legacy, is the default of you following that passion.
Yeah. I was looking at a video on YouTube, and he's talking about legacy. And he brought up an interesting point where he says, like, why a lot of people want to create a legacy. And then he asked, but why? Mm-hmm. And it really got me thinking, like, all right, well, why? And he said, why do you want to create a legacy? Because you're going to die and you're never going to know how that legacy actually turned out.
Yeah. Well, so are you asking me? Because I've got an answer to that.
It's a question I'm just posing to the audience so they can just think about it and then go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is something great to ponder. I mean, you're going to be gone. What's the big deal? But for me, I'm a spiritual person, and I have faith that God has placed me here for a certain thing. And you may not be spiritual, but you may be. It doesn't matter. You've got to find this out for you. But for me, I've been given talents and gifts and abilities and skills, and also experiences, great experiences and horrible experiences in my life as a tool to allow me to impact others. And that's why I think I'm here. The only reason I'm here on this planet is to help other people make the most of themselves. That's my children, that's my wife, that's my community, and that's all the men that we're impacting through Order of Man.
Yeah. Yeah, it brings up an interesting point, because I feel like it can provide a lot of power when you define your legacy. It can also bring about a lot of anxiety.
Sure.
And just this feeling of like, if you're not doing it, then you're not living up to your full potential.
Which I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it's how you just look at it, because I just said it's a power that you can choose. It's like you can grab it and use it for good, or if you just let it beat you down, it can beat you down.
Right. Yeah. For me, knowing that there is this unlimited potential that I have, that to me is motivating. I'm like, oh, great. I can be better tomorrow than I am today. What's that actually going to look like? I'm excited about that. That drives me.
That's kind of like the red pill type of idea, where you obviously taking the red pill. And once you've seen kind of behind the curtain, or you've taken the pill, there's no going back. It's because you know that you could always be doing something better to improve your life, to improve your family's lives, to build that legacy. Like, you just know, like, you've taken control of your life, and you know that you can continue to do that for the rest of your life. Like, you're not a victim of circumstance. And I think once you take that and fully internalize that, it's a very liberating feeling.
You know, I use this analogy of a thermostat, and I don't know if you've heard this analogy or not, but we all have this internal thermostat of where we're performing in any area of your life. So I've mentioned, obviously, that I'm a financial advisor, and I would see guys before 2000, 2008, 2009, when the market really crashed. I would see guys who were very, very successful monetarily. I was looking at because of my trade.
Right.
And I saw in 2008 and 2009, a lot of these guys lose a lot of money and get themselves in a bad situation with creditors and foreclosures and bankruptcies. But what was interesting to me, as the economy started to recover and as they got their feet under them a little bit, everybody kind of went back to where they were before 2008. Well, why is that? Because those people have learned and developed some habits in their life that keep them exactly where they want to be on this thermostat. Just right, the perfect temperature. If they start to get too hot, meaning they get too much success, they'll they won't be aware of it, the fact that they're sabotaging themselves. If they get a little cold, a little cool, maybe not as much success as the thermostat is set for, they'll start doing the actions to get them back up to where they feel comfortable. So the goal is to change your thermostat, change the environment so that you're always operating on a higher and higher temperature, if you will.
I like that. No, I haven't heard that. That brings up some good insight. Thank you, Ryan. Let's now dive into the knowledge round. Just going to ask you some rapid fire questions here, Ryan.
All right.
I want to share with you more about the Knowledge for Men 3-day intensive seminar for men. I will help you discover yourself so you will know exactly who you are, what you want, and have the conviction to get there. To become a leader so you can achieve greatness in all aspects of your life and become the man you want to be. To unleash your inner warrior. You will be tested, challenged, and pushed beyond your limits. But together, we will push the boundaries of what's really possible in your life. Go to kfmseminar.com to reserve your space, because limited seats are available at the seminar, and there are thousands of men listening to this right now. When the spots are gone, they're gone. So go to kfmseminar.com and join me now. This is your time. I'd love to serve you in building and creating a bigger life. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. All right, so first question I have here is, one, we've been talking about purpose, and I love the energy, I could just tell all the energy, the inflection behind your voice, like you are on purpose. What advice would you give to someone who does not have that and they are feeling lost?
Explore interests. That is the number one thing you can do. I think too many of us have this interest and immediately we start thinking about why we should not explore those avenues. And I would say that you should explore those avenues and see how far that road or that rabbit hole leads.
Yeah, I like that. And what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
Excuses. At the end of the day, I was telling myself a lot of things as to why I couldn't be successful and why I shouldn't have these things and why I wasn't good enough and why I wasn't smart enough and why I didn't have the right networks. And when I started to eliminate those things and started to take control of the network that I wanted to build, like connecting and reaching out with guys like yourself, and I started to get past all the BS that I was telling myself, things just exponentially increased from there. That takes a hard look in the mirror to be able to do that, though. And you won't like what you see initially, but I promise it's worth it.
Yeah. And Ron, can you name a person who's had a tremendous impact on your life, such as a mentor? Who is this person and how have they impacted you?
I'm going to go back to my mom on that one. I mean, it's interesting that I talk about a mentor being a woman when I have this blog called Order of Man. But at the end of the day, a lot of the skills and traits and abilities and the things that we talk about are universal. They're not gender specific. And so she taught me a lot about discipline and commitment and honor and all of the virtues that I try to adhere to, that I try to live up to on a daily basis.
I like that. And it's not, I ask that question often. It's not all the time I hear that. So actually, You might be the first. That's good. Yeah, it's great. And what would you say are 2 or even 3 of your most influential books and why?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. I try to read a ton. I just read a book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, a Navy SEAL commander. It is an incredible book. And he talks a lot about why taking ownership of your life and eliminating excuses as a leader is going to be so valuable in your life. So I would say Extreme Ownership is a great read. I'm in the middle of a book called Wild at Heart by John Eldredge that talks a lot about the masculine soul and spirit and energy of what it means to be a man. And that's been really, really enlightening as I've wondered why I felt stagnant in my life and wonder now why I don't feel that way at all. So I would say those 2 recommendations would be good reads for you guys.
Yeah, like those.
Have you read either of those?
I've read. I actually own the Navy SEAL one. That's been brought up a couple times. Yeah, and I have like a stack of books. It's somewhere in queue, just ready to go.
Tons. Yeah.
And Wild at Heart is it's a classic book. Highly recommend.
Awesome.
Well, here's the scenario for you, Ryan. So imagine you had 60 seconds with your 25-year-old self. What advice would you give him? If you had 60 seconds, what would you tell him to do? What would you tell him not to do?
I think the most important thing that you can do is be deliberate about who you're spending your time with and what your environment looks like. If you're in a crappy environment where everybody's negative and everybody's performing on a mediocre level, the odds are very high, extremely high, that you're going to live a mediocre life. And you're always going to wonder in your life if there's more or if I'm at my full potential. So surround yourself with people who are more successful than you. Be deliberate about who it is that you want to connect with. Find interesting and creative ways to provide value for those people and connect with those people. Change your neighborhood, change the people you work with, change your office. Do whatever you can to always be upping the environment that you surround yourself with.
Yeah, Jim Rohn always says you are the average of the 5 people you most surround yourself with. I read.
Yes.
I remember I read that and it felt like I got hit by a brick in the head. Like I was just I started thinking about it, and I can look at every phase of my life and what I was doing, and I was always surrounded by people who were doing that same thing, whether it was something negative or experimenting versus in school getting good grades or starting a business or in dating, whatever. Wherever I was, there was always people who were around me who were doing that. So if you can control that, I think, and consciously select the people that you want to be around in your life, you can really take control of your life. It's such a life hack.
Well, and I think a lot of guys will hear that and they're like, "Oh, but what about this person? I'm connected to this person. How do I get rid of this person in my life?" And you don't have to get rid of anybody. I'm not saying get rid of people in your life. I'm just saying be deliberate about spending maybe a little bit more time this week that with somebody who's successful. And what you'll find is that by doing that over and over and over again, which is kind of an underlying theme of this podcast, is consistency over time.
Right.
Just be constantly improving. And before you know it, you'll look around and see yourself with all these high achievers, and you'll actually be a higher achiever yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And that is probably the first question that comes up every time. What do I do with my friend? What do I do?
Yep.
Or it could be even a family member. But
oh, yeah, all the time. Yep. What about my sister? What about my sibling? Or what about, yep, I know. Just find people, and you'll gradually just navigate to that if you're being deliberate about it.
Yeah. What would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Take action. I mean, that's as simple as it is. I've got a lot of faults, and I've got a lot of things that I want to improve on and be better at. But when people ask me how you've been successful with Order Man or how you're successful in your financial planning practice, it's not that I'm smarter. It's not that I know more. It's not that I even have a great network. It's the fact that I've always been willing to take action. So if I hear something that sounds like it might work, I'm willing to try it, even though it may not work. And so I'd rather mess up moving forward than mess up sitting on the fence and never taking action in my life.
Yeah, there's that quote. I think we've all seen it somewhere on Facebook. That meme where it's like hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly right. Yeah. And I subscribe to that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that's going to conclude the knowledge round there, Ryan. Epic podcast. Great content, great lessons here. What's exciting you now today? I know, you're making this transition, so maybe talk about that, some of the moves you're going to make with going full time with Order Man.
Yeah. So it's been a great journey, and it's been exciting to see it resonate. We've got some mastermind groups that we do. That's a big part of that. I've done some speaking engagements and got some speaking engagements lined up this year, which will be another component of that, and we'll bring in some individual coaching as well. So those are the things that I have on the docket, and that's how we're able to do this full time and be able to connect with as many men as we have. So I'd love for anybody to check it out at orderman.com if they're interested in learning a little bit more.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show, sharing your story and being vulnerable. There's been invaluable lessons here on the show. So thank you, Ryan.
I appreciate you. Thanks for the opportunity, man.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get free tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and I'll see you in the next episode.